And we're now live on YouTube and Twitch. What's going on? Someone over there viewing on the YouTube. Bit of water get us started today. All right. I want to talk about Chitin, Chitosan, Aloe, and SAR, aka the systemic acquired resistance. So yeah, it might be a little bit deep today, but you know, hang in there. I'll see if we can't figure it out together. Where can you grab one of these teas? You can't grab them anywhere yet. This one I just got. This is from a shop. The ringer teas are still available for sale. They're on the website. But as for the super special, like HBO high fashion shirts, they're not available yet, my dude. But maybe at some point. Just someone over there commenting on the thing. Yeah, bro. Nice to see you over there on the YouTube. We see you there. Hopefully it's working for you now. Yeah, YouTube's sometimes a little bit buggy. Alright, so we have... Hey, no worries, Mycopathical. G'day, Ryan. How's everyone going? So, Chitin, Chitosan, let's start with them. We have two notable products in our range that contain these things. Well, Chitosan anyway. I'll just stop sharing that asset on that thing. There we go. Now you can see me a little bit better. In the form of the Ocean Potion and Antimatter. Chitin, though, is available in stuff like your oyster lime. It's a component of oyster shells. It's available in crustacean meal because it's what makes up a lot of the crustacean shell. In addition to calcium carbonate, and also notably in insect frass. So those are some amendments that contain chitin. But Chitosan is the more available form of it, and it's the more widely studied one, and it's the one that has a more potent action. So, for instance, antimatter has fungal and crustacean-derived Chitosan in it, because it's also a component of mushroom bodies. So fungi is actually made up of chitin. Also, it's the second most prominent polysaccharide in the environment apart from cellulose. So very, very around. Don, how you going? Yeah, I'm afraid I can't sort of let people on that haven't talked with me prior. But feel free to get at me, text me and some stuff like that, and we can talk about that sort of stuff. So anyway, the chitin is a polysaccharide, and then Chitosan is the oligosaccharide that is derived from chitin. So it's produced through microorganisms, so it can be produced in the soil, or it's also produced industrially, so it's as a chemical process. G'day, Exotic Alchemy. And it's quite a powerful compound. So it's been shown to have even though the exact mechanisms are kind of complicated and hard to nail down with it, it's been shown to elicit a variety of responses. G'day, baby May, how you doing? Including, and this is from studies, the accumulation of phytoalexins, pathogen-related proteins, proteinase inhibitors, and it's also shown evidence that it promotes lignin synthesis and callus formation. So if, for instance, an injury is sustained, it heals faster. So think Wolverine. It also, through lignin synthesis, promotes stronger stems. So when stems are moved around, that's also a method of strengthening stems, and how it does that is just micro injuries all the time, which increase lignin synthesis. A side benefit of Chitosan is all these lovely compounds that it helps the plant produce in flavour and, let's say cannabinoid producing plants. A side benefit is it seems to show an accumulation of those too, so it promotes quality. That's something that's a bit more of an anecdotal thing, but at the same time it has been observed by a wide variety of people that it tends to make stuff terpier. And one of the ways it could be doing this is by promoting jasmonic acid production. So jasmonic acid has shown direct responses when applied exogenously, and it tends to frost things right up. So a side benefit of Chitosan application is increased jasmonic acid production, which then increases quality, right? Super cool, super great. So far, all sounding pretty good. It's both chitin and Chitosan have been demonstrated to have antiviral, antibacterial, and antifungal properties. And they also even have some nutrient chelation functions by keeping micronutrients and minerals from being accessed by the pathogens. So the plant gets them instead, effectively depriving them. Okay, Craig? And I'm glad that it's working over there on the YouTube. Awesome, cool. If you're looking for better video quality and a virtual background, check out Hype Out Organics on YouTube if you're currently watching on Instagram. And we're also listening to Trip Sitter. This is a local band, Australian band, psychedelic rock. Microorganisms are capable of taking chitin, and some of them produce chitinase, which is an enzyme which then deacetylates chitin to chitosan. And that chitinase enzyme also has a direct effect on the exoskeletons of things like insects. So chitosan itself has shown some direct toxicity to insect larvae and a bunch of things like that. But yeah, the chitinase enzyme being in the soil or around the pests also has a down pressure effect on pests and pathogens. So they're interesting compounds. There's different forms available. A lot of them are basically micronized forms of the chitosan, so they're components that the plant can uptake. You can apply them via foliar, or you can apply them, I mostly apply them via drenching, or in the case of the amendments I mentioned, frass and crustacean meal and those sorts of things, you can mix those into your soil or top dress with them. So the breakdown of those tends to foster chitinase being around, which then has a down pressure effect on pests, which is an interesting thing. And the antiviral component of it is interesting in the prevention of mosaic viruses. So it's been something demonstrated to sort of prevent mosaic viruses. We'll get to that at the end, Vince. We'll sort of just go through a bit of stuff at the top, and then we'll answer some Q&A at the end. But yeah, there's a variety of different ways. Just as a side note, if you're looking for some benefit, we have a how to use grow dirt on the website, and the feed chart that we've devised also sort of has a pretty good overview on how to use stuff. So between those two pages, that sort of gets you going in the right direction. But I'd be happy to go over your particular grow in a minute. So yeah, the chitinase has a systemic weakening effect on the exoskeletons of insects because that's what makes up the chitin making up their exoskeleton. Chitinase is the enzyme that actually breaks that down, so you actually weaken their entire body. So yeah, quite good on that. Chitosan has also shown some effects on helping germination rate and lessening germination time. In some studies, it also showed that it increased shoot height and root length in things. G'day, K Boozy. What's going on, guys? So yeah, that's where I've found, and I've sort of said this before, but utilizing antimatter, for instance, as a seed soak. Really, I've found myself to observe a pretty prominent benefit to germinating seeds. So whether they're old seeds or new seeds, once they're cleaned, rolling them around in antimatter and then putting them in dirt, I've found that I get stronger germination and better germination. So it evens out the time of germination between seeds. I get more seeds germinate, and of the seeds that I get germinate, I get better quality plants. So it could, in that particular product's instance, be the chitosan. It could also be the organisms that are in it. So the trichoderma, for instance, that are in it are capable of producing some chitinase activity, but there are also things that have been shown to benefit seed growth. 420 Galaxy, what's going on? So something that's sort of particularly prudent at the moment is chitosan has shown a very potent drought-resistant effect. So how it's kind of been theorized that it's working, or at least shown in some studies, is that it's acting as an anti-transpiration agent. So you might think that's a bad thing, but the same study that showed that it acted as an anti-transpiration agent also showed that it had no effect on yield. So quite impressively, it showed a 26 to 43% reduction in water use, but with no yield difference. So plants using nearly slightly less than half the amount of water, but still yielding the same. So in times like the moment, the current weather system that we're in, where it's very hot, it's very dry, water's hard to come by. Made a rhyme. It's a potent thing to use. So if you're following our feed chart, for instance, normally we've got antimatter applied weekly, and we've also got ocean potion applied weekly. That means that you've got two opportunities there to get chitosan into your plants. So yeah, and you can also, if you want to, ocean potion can be applied as a foliar. So if you're a crop duster, or you're one of those people that likes to foliar regardless, it's a good one. It's a good one to incorporate on a regular basis for that. And you also get all the benefits of the kelp extracts and stuff like that are in the ocean potion, but just specifically focusing on chitosan. It's in multiple of our products, so even if you're alternating between things, you're still getting regular use of those things. And no worries, dude. I'm glad that you're Okay, so I'm going to put a pin in Kay Busey and Vince's questions, and I'll get to those in a minute. Just let me ramble on for a minute about this stuff. I promise I won't bore you to tears too much. And then I'll, because I wrote notes and everything, you know, come on, man. And we'll get to some Q&A afterwards. Is that cool? Hanging with me there. So before I kind of drop Chitosan for the moment, and I know this is by no means all-encompassing. It's a deep topic. You can really get into the weeds on it. But another thing that it does that's quite cool is it increases root growth by causing the accumulation of indole acetic acid, which is a root growth promoting hormone, at root tips. So I've suggested to some people before, if they've had problems with overwatering, for instance, or anything that's damaged the root system, or say post-transplant, something like antimatter is a great thing to apply because you get the protection from the microorganisms, as well as things like Chitosan and all the rest of it to help bolster immunity and improve healing. So all in all, where's my button? All in all, Chitosan is the shit. Yeah. Rightio. So salicylic acid and SAR. So salicylic acid, the component of some plants that are hazed and confused. It'll help with any infestations, Bill. So Chitosan's shown a very wide-ranging effect on a variety of things, everything from pathogenic fungi and problematic bacteria to many, many different types of pests. So yeah, try it and possibly use chitin-containing or chitin-rich amendments as well, and you're sort of getting a 2-for-1 then. So another really potent immune-boosting kind of compound that's used is salicylic acid, and the way that works is basically this mechanism called systemic acquired resistance. And so what this is a signaling mechanism that provides a broad and lasting resistance to plant infections. So naturally, when plants are damaged by necrotizing pathogens, so things that cause death of tissue, this causes a sort of immunological memory of the attack, right? So it activates this systemic acquired resistance. So this is also why plants that are, you know, under pristine conditions and never experience any stress often just completely go to crap when they encounter any form of problem from the environment, because they have very little resistance, so the amount of stuff they've been through is low. So they have a low immunological memory. So plants do indeed have some kind of memory. But what it does then is the SAR primes the plant's defenses in case of future attacks. So say if there was some kind of fungal infection, ramps up SAR and then helps to try and make the plant more resistant to future attacks. So plants that are in the SAR state are hypersensitive to attacks. Now, not all plants are able to accumulate large amounts of salicylic acid. So that's where it makes it challenging for plants to, I mean, if it was only that simple, right? If only plants could produce endogenously the amount of compounds that they need to constantly ward off pests and problems, they would never be affected by them. But nature doesn't tend to work that way. But we can exogenously, so apply it from an external source, because other plants, such as aloe, are quite capable of accumulating large amounts of salicylic acid. In fact, we use a 200-to-1, we use a whole leaf extract, but we also use a 200-to-1 aloe extract in the Green Supreme, and so 200 kilos of aloe makes 1 kilo of this concentrate. 200 kilos of aloe roughly equates to about half a kilo of straight salicylic acid. So that's a lot of it. But you don't need a lot for it to have a good effect on plants. You just kind of need a bit. So the salicylic acid being applied from an external source means that the plant hasn't actually gone through an infection, but at the same time it gets this signaling molecule that tells it that it has. And so the plant then activates the SAR and primes it for future attacks, but it never actually underwent an attack in the first place. So what that effectively means is that exogenously applied salicylic acid puts your plants kind of on guard, and then if something does come along, normally it'll just bounce right off them, or at least they'll be much more adept at coping with it. Interestingly, plants that have their SAR induced also transmit that information to other surrounding plants. So it kind of, for instance, in one study there was tobacco that was infected with mosaic virus, and it then signaled to other tobacco plants around it that it was infected, causing their SAR to be ramped up even though they hadn't yet been infected, and help guard them from the virus. So it's a very interesting compound, and it's an interesting way of using, for instance, with seaweed and kelp, we get, I've spoken about these before, but we get phytohormones and cytokines and things like that extracted from their tissue. Well, this is another kind of, they're compounds that exist in aloe, and we're just making use of those by applying them to a plant exogenously. So you can apply them as a drench, they're active that way, or you can apply them as a foliar. I find them quite effective that way. And you'll be activating the SAR, and genes that are related to immunity and guard from infection will be on rather than off. So effectively activating plants. It has shown in some studies that it can kind of make things like it's not a free lunch. You would be capable in some instances of applying way too much and stunting things particularly. There was one study that I read but the plants were also nitrogen deficient, so it's hard to really infer too much from it. But applying a lot of salicylic acid in a nitrogen deficient context, sort of reduced growth. But if plants have everything they want and you're not sort of over applying these things, and trust me, it would be really difficult to go too far. It's hard to sort of get that kind of a response. But you can combine both. So you can use both Chitosan and salicylic acid in the same program and on a regular basis. And you're sort of activating two different mechanisms. So helping your plants to cope with things before they're even infected. So that's sort of a kind of IPM in a way. And it's not like it only has that effect, because you also get the side benefit of these things producing a quality increase. And in the case of aloe, it has a notable side benefit where to get to the salicylic acid, you also get a lot of saponins, and they're great at, they have some sort of effect on pests, but they're really great at helping wet down your soil. So yeah, something good to apply. And so if you're using our program, as I mentioned before, antimatter's dialed in about once a week, ocean potion about once a week, so that's 2 applications of Chitosan. You could apply a third by foliar applying ocean potion at some point, say on Wet Wednesday. And in veg, I normally time at once a week drench of green supremes, so getting some salicylic acid in there, and then I'll normally choose a foliar application of it on a Friday. So foliar Friday for some green supreme. So you've got multiple applications of things in that concept there, in that the concept being that you're not applying the same things all the time, but you're applying things that benefit the plant every single week, which I've found, at least anecdotally, helps. G'day, Grow Green Daddy. All right, that's enough of me rambling away. Let's get back to Vince's question. So, what's the best way to water indoors? A little or a lot all at once? So, what I would say is that it's a little tricky sometimes to um, dial soil in. So, I just moved my camera. Busy feet. It's a little difficult sometimes to dial soil grows in from timed irrigation events. I mean, if your environment is super rock solid, and so their dryback is the same every day, you can approximate, but for instance, they're going to use less at the tail end of flower than they do at the start of flower. Especially during the stretch phase, they're monsters. They'll drink a lot. So I generally tend to advise people to hand water if they can. And if things like that aren't suitable, then I favour kind of a more plant-driven irrigation system. So things like sub-irrigated planters are great. The plant can just kind of take what it wants when it wants it. Or blue mat systems are good as well. So those are kind of some ways that you can do it. If you are using timed intervals, err on the side of less, and then be prepared to check in on that. So say twice a week. Check pot weights a little bit, kind of, stick your finger in the soil, see what's kind of happening there. Don't just kind of assume that, say, the irrigation events you dialed in week 1 are going to be unilaterally the same throughout your whole flowering cycle. You might need to sort of tweak things here and there, so turn down the flow of your pump or make the irrigation interval less. It requires a bit of fiddling about. But yeah, that's some tips. Also, I've said it a million times, but breathable pots, fabric pots, or the spiky hedgehog ones that I can never remember the name of. Those ones. 26-gallon pots too is a decent size, man. That's a monster of a pot. So my thinking with that would be that you're actually not watering that often. There's a chance that you could really just sort that out through the week with just hand watering. Generally, your application of water volume in soil is really only 5 to 10% of the volume of your pot. So it'd be 5 to 10% of your 26 gallons. So maximum, 2.6 gallons. So yeah, depending on your schedule, I know we're all pretty busy. But yeah, you could even just do that by hand with a spray bottle, with a pump pack sprayer or a battery powered sprayer. That would almost be my preferred, and then that way you get to assess the garden more as it's growing, rather than trying to dial stuff in with pumps and whatnot. Pumps and stuff like that work okay when you're kind of dealing with like inert media and you're feeding salts and you need that level of runoff and all that sort of stuff all the time. It's much easier to treat it like a machine, whereas your soil's more like a pet. You care for the pet grows you a plant. It's a roundabout kind of way of doing it. But I'm sure you've had pets before, and you know that they don't tend to eat the same thing like clockwork every single day. So you can kind of think of your soil that way as well. So I hope that gives you a bit of a hand, but feel free to drop responses in the comments and I'll re-respond. I'll do a re-response. And K Boozy, so what we got for you there? Well, if you use it, if you use and grow dirt full spec, so water only soils, either it or the Gorilla Grow Dirt, does it require anything really other than the soil? That depends on the size of your pot. So lack of pot leads to lack of pot. But suffice to say, water only has its limits, because you can't expect to grow a very large plant in a tiny pot and also treat it as water only. So for water only to really work and be quite effective, you need a large reserve there. So you might have to use a greater volume of soil than you might have anticipated. So if you're using a large enough volume of soil, then you can get away with water only because there's plenty of reserve there to grow the plant. In fact, you probably have excess, which you can tap into later, say on the second cycle. If you're not one of those people using one of those sizes of pots, and that's most people, then top dressing with things, or supplementing. So you mentioned the Herb Superb and Stone Age. Also supplementing with things like the aquamarine and ocean potion because they're soluble fertilizers. Helps kind of bridge that gap a little bit so you can support more biomass with a smaller amount of reserves there, if that makes sense. So you're kind of topping up your tank as you're driving rather than having a long range tank there ready for the plant to tap into. If you're using full spec and you're in like a 20 litre to a 40 litre pot, you can get a long way with just full spec herb superb balance and some stone age. If I was to add any of the additives to that, I would chuck in agrobiotics, so something like Rhizo Mojo or antimatter, depending on which way you want to go. There's pros and cons for both, or different effects for both. And another one that I sort of like to mention is the Green Supreme because it has such wide-ranging benefits. But in terms of food, a bit of Herb Superb and Stone Age, they're core supplements in our range. And they can provide a whole range of benefits. There's a bunch of different, so there's enzymes in there from stuff like the malted barley. There's cytokines and hormones and things like that in there from the kelp. The triocantanol from the alfalfa. So those products alone are quite powerful. And then the things like the soluble microbes and whatnot just facilitate the breakdown and utilization of the nutrients both in them and in the soil. So yeah, requirement kind of depends on what size container you're using, what your grow is, how you're going with all that kind of stuff. Generally, the more soil volume you have, the less other stuff you can kind of, the less other stuff that you would use. 11 Jason, Zoom, Lonnie, North Narrabeen. And look, to make antimatter really easy for me to use, I basically just use it once a week and I use it on Sunday. So Sunday's a great day to clean a house, and that's kind of how I view antimatter. So once a week, about 5 grams in 10 litres, which equates to roughly 1 heaped scoop from the So, a minute. Where's my chicken noodle powder? 1 scoop. Looks like about that. Right, that'll be about 5 grams in 10 litres. You can go 2 scoops if you want, but 5 grams is a pretty good application rate. And that once a week is about all I do. And then I'll use Mojo throughout the week. But I have Mojo on standby. I make the stuff. If you don't have Mojo, you don't have to use Mojo. Mojo makes everything work better, but you don't. Not to say that you have to use it. Axel Bro. Not Axel Rose, Axel Bros. Hey. And no, the antimatter you apply to your water. So you mix it into your water and water it in. It's a miscible powder, that one. There we go. So yeah, I hope that helps you on that one. If anyone has any other questions that they would like answered, or would like me to go over any of the other ramblings that I rambled with earlier in my ramblings, you're welcome. No worries, KB. I hope that provided you some assistance. I'm trying to play it cool in here, but my God, it's damn hot in this room. It's like I'm dying in here. I got to get some damn air conditioning or something like that. Bit of Digital Underground. This might even be the closeout, depending how things go. Grow Green Daddy there gave some Green Supreme Antimatter and Rhizo Mojo. Geez, you had the whole gamut in there. Was that Green Supreme Antimatter, Mojo, Aquamarine, and Ocean Potion all in the one drink? My lord. What I've been doing with Ocean Potion lately, I've been using Aquamarine too, but Ocean Potion I've been running all the way up to basically, the last couple of days before harvest. And it seems to be improving the burn rate of stuff. So me and another fellow have been mucking around with that. and it seems to have that effect. So yeah, the magnesium being a hot burning mineral, it seems to actually help your joints stay lit. That's lit. Okay, Busy. Do I recommend pHing water? So I've kind of spoken about this before, but the reason that I don't recommend people pHing their water the majority of the time is, why is your water the wrong pH? So normally what's causing it to be the wrong pH is some kind of impurity. So if it's, say, if it's high, it's probably got dissolved carbonates in there, which is really common. Or, you know, if it's really low, it could have tannins in there. There could be a variety of reasons for it being low. So normally most people that clean their water source up, so filter it or RO it or whatever you need to do to get your water clean, you don't need to pH adjust it. So ideally you want to be applying pure water. And pure water will be mildly acidic, which works great for soil. The trouble with introducing acids to your water is that then when you water those into your soil, those acids have, for instance, if it's pH down, phosphoric acid will react with calcium sources in the soil and drive down soil pH by precipitating out calcium. So you're fixing one thing and affecting another thing, because that's just the way stuff works, no free lunch. So you can use weaker acids, so things like white vinegar, which is acetic acid, or citric acid. Those are appropriate for adjusting your water pH. But what I normally recommend people do, rather than continuing to just adjust the water pH all the time, is clean your water source up, because if you're using pure water, you shouldn't really need to think about it much more than that. So yeah, and really the pHing thing anyway is pretty bunk in soil, because you're not dealing with salts, so you're not dealing with the band of nutrient availability that you need to balance when you're using nutrient salts. So what using some of those pH adjusters can do is affect the global pH of your soil, and that will affect your growth. So if you're applying, say, a 7.9 water source all the time, it's not so much the pH of that water that's affecting your grow, it's the fact that that's got carbonates in it, so probably calcium and probably salt and probably magnesium as well. And those are then affecting the pH of your soil, so driving it up. So yeah, that's a bit of a long and a short of it there. But yeah, filter your water, dude. That's basically all you need to do. If you're on town water, RO units now, a couple $100 on eBay. You can do those once and sort it out. If you're somewhere you can collect the rainwater, just do that. Rainwater is really about the best you can use most times. And then all you got to do is just throw that through a Brita filter to clean up any mild impurities. And you're good. But if you wouldn't drink it, don't use it on your soil. That's generally the rule. G'day, Corbin. And someone there on YouTube asking, why not just follow the chart? Well, I mean, the chart's a good summary and it works well for most people most times, but like anything, it's not a recipe for success. It's a guide. That's why it's a grow guide, not a grow map. So yeah, some people will be using in between pot sizes. Their environment might not be on point, and so they've got to water more often. There's a variety of reasons why people might not be able to follow the chart as we've kind of laid it out, as good as we tried to make it, and as weird as we tried to make it. But yeah, the chart, it kind of lays stuff out pretty good. Generally what you can do is just, if you got to water more, keep the feed events and everything where they are and just water in between. So just do a plain water or something like a mojo water in between. Works great. G'day, Bruised. What's going on? So if you look at how much calcium WCA actually provides, it's really not that much. And it also comes with the side effect of you're applying an acid all the time. So yeah, use it, but like all of those KNF inputs, they're applied in very small concentrations. So they're not the best, in my opinion, at turning around a deficiency, but they can be great at, like, the form of calcium that's when you take acetic acid and you react calcium carbonate with it, and all the carbon dioxide bubbles off, so you liberate the carbon part of it, you're left with calcium acetate, and calcium acetate is soluble and plants can use it. So it's a good thing to kind of use as a prophylaxis, but it's, I mean, you can, here's the thing, if you try and apply enough of it to kind of correct the deficiency, you're also applying a lot of acetic acid, and then that's going to have downstream effects on your soil pH, so that's the limitation with that stuff. I would more reach for something like a solid calcium source, like, I mean, Stone Age is 7:1, calcium to magnesium. That's a good one to go for. It's also got a good whack of iron in it, which can help with greening. And, of course, the aforementioned Ocean Potion. So it's got micronized forms of calcium and magnesium in it. So they're really quickly available, really, really, really tiny and really quick to act in the soil. So those are probably a better choice of if you're noticing a deficiency. But K&F stuff is great for prophylaxis, so just using those kinds of things on a regular basis so you don't really ever get a deficiency. What's going on, ITL? Yeah, so wouldn't really use it to adjust pH, because then you're going to be applying just stick to the doses that they recommend in K&F manuals, basically, which is normally 1 to 500 or 1 to 1,000. The trouble with that is that if you're using it as a pH adjuster, you might need to apply more than that, and then you're applying more than the recommended amount. So yeah, again, if you're sticking that in some plain water, I wouldn't even be checking it. But that's just me. I tend to find that the less I mess with that kind of stuff, the better the results are. The more you chase fractional figures on water pH and stuff like that, the less other stuff you're probably ignoring, more other stuff you're probably ignoring, which could actually be benefiting things. So some feeds, for instance, will be alkaline when you test them, or they'll be acidic. The thing is that the soil is the buffer. So the soil buffers all that out, right? So the global pH that your roots are experiencing is still within the range. So can you kind of understand? Can you dig what I'm vibing on here in terms of that? If you are applying something on a regular basis to adjust the water pH, which doesn't really have, it only has a very transient effect on the soil. But if the stuff you're putting in that water might have a global effect on the soil, and that will actually affect your growth in a negative way normally. So that's kind of that's the thing. Terminally unique. What's going on, dude? Definitely a dude, that one. Did you just give me the beasties? Oh, hell yeah, and Bismarcky. Oh, that's killer. So good. It's like, for instance, if you know how you see those things on TikTok every so often where they'll tell you to drink lemon juice water to make your body more alkaline. Not only is that like stupid because it's an acid, so if you're going to try and make your body more alkaline, you'd ingest something alkaline. But it's a different mechanism. So your body's global pH is not going to be really affected by you putting a small amount of citric acid in your water. It's kind of there's much more complicated global effect going on there in your body, and your soil is it's a terrible analogy, but at the same time, I've got to reach for these things every so often in an attempt to put them in language that people can digest. Soil is a living thing. It is more complicated than we realize, really, and in fact, to the point of there's people that make their entire theses and whole careers on just figuring out one small segment of what's happening there. So we shouldn't really pretend to know anything for certain about that kind of stuff, I guess. Or that, that something like your water being 6.5 instead of 6.2 is going to have a drastic effect on your bottom line. Like, I can guarantee you there's other stuff you could be focusing on that'll actually bring you better yields. That's in soil. The same advice can't apply to something like salt grows. You can't just be like, well, F the pH testing. I'll just run without adjustment and wing it. In a salt grow, that'd be a real cause for, I mean, not checking your EC and not checking your pH would be silly in that. In soil, it's oftentimes just useless information. You don't necessarily need, it's often, I'm not saying that it's not going to affect things any time, but people have been taught to hyper-focus on those things because they've used salts and they don't have the same sort of bearing. It's like if you get really good at driving go-karts, that doesn't make you an expert at driving jet skis. It's a different thing. So the skills you've learnt on a go-kart, some of those transfer over, but really it's learning to ride a jet ski. So yeah, and soil's the jet ski because, I mean, as cool as go-karts are, jet skis are cooler. And soil is cooler than salts. All right. Do it from the Beastie Boys and Biz Marquee. Do it. All right, we're going to finish with George today by the sound of it. This has been a good one. If you get really, well, there's lots of things like that. I mean, you know, like if you, pro baseball does, oh yeah, okay, all right, we'll find the atomic dog. It's not very often that I get a request. So there we go. Yeah. Come on, give me the atomic dog. Max volume. There we go. Crooked Wonderland. How you going, dude? Yeah, pro baseball does translate to pro jet skier. Pro jet skier translates to, I don't know, man. You're probably doing better in your life than me. If you're a pro jet skier, like, how'd you snare that gig? hit me up in my DMs. We'll talk. You know. Righto. I'm going to leave this one up. I'll try and leave it up on the Instagram. Hopefully it won't get pulled because we've got some copywritten material in it. But we're going to ride out on the Atomic Dog today. I'm going to go and enjoy my Sunday. Have it your way. You deserve a break today. New batches of soil will be hitting stores through the week. Sent some stuff out to Here We Grow Warrigal. We've sent some more stuff out to South Pacific. We've sent out, I think Goat will be getting some. Yeah, there's a variety of people. So if you're chasing some dirt, doesn't hurt to give them a call. But for today, I think I'm going to leave you with the Atomic Dog. And I'll go and make some atomic dirt. Why must I dig like that? Why must I make the batch? Thanks, y'all. Catch you on the next one. These are awesome.
Why must I feel like that? Why must I chase the cat? Nobody dogging me. Why must I feel like that? Why must I chase the cat? Nobody dogging me.